In this video, I'd like to talk about the link between environment and another of the hidden forces that drive human behavior, which is genetics. So to tell this story, I'd like to tell you about a man named John Endler, who was doing some research and work in Trinidad and Tobago. And as Endler was walking through the jungle there, looking at the different rivers, he noticed a couple interesting geological features. So the first was that the main river was running down, but there were a variety of little streams that were kind of coming into the river. And as these streams were coming in, there were a couple pools that were forming and then a waterfall that would go into the main riverbed. So what he ended up having was three different areas where they had the same geological features, the same type of environment, if you will, in pool 1 above the waterfall, pool 2 above the waterfall, and then down in the river itself beneath the waterfalls. And Endler was studying a little fish called a guppy or a rainbow fish, and some of them can be quite brightly colored and others can be more dull in color. And what Endler realized was that these different areas, pool 1, pool 2, and the river, had different predators available in them. Down in the river, there were these really nasty pike cichlids that were very competitive and would eat a lot of the guppies. So it was kind of a dangerous environment for the guppies, filled with a lot of predators. Meanwhile, up in one of the pools, there were no pike cichlids. It was basically a safe environment for them. And then in the third one, there were some pike cichlids and then also some other less dangerous predators. So this was kind of like a middle ground one that was not as dangerous as down the river. Well, what Endler found was that he took some of the guppies and he put some in the safe pool and some in the moderate pool and some down in the dangerous pool. And 2 years later, he returned to that area. And guppies don't live very long, so that was enough time for about 15 generations to go through. And interestingly, what he found was that the guppies in the really safe pool, they were incredibly brightly colored and rainbow in their shapes and colors. The guppies down in the river, where it was really dangerous, they were more dull in color. They matched the background of the rocks and the bed of the river. And the ones that were in the medium one were a little bit brightly colored than the ones in the river, but not as brightly colored as the ones in the safe pool. And what's interesting is that from an evolutionary perspective, guppies have to strike a balance between being really visible and colorful and attractive to female guppies to attract them for mates, and being safe and camouflaging in with the background to hide from pike cichlids and other dangerous predators. And so what Endler's study showed was one of the first clear proofs of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution in the real world, where guppies would adapt to their natural environment based on what they were presented with, based on whether or not they were in a dangerous environment and camouflage was more important and they would have dull color, or based on whether they were in a safe environment and attracting mates was more important and they would be really brightly colored. And what's interesting here is that this is a real link, a bridge between one force of our behavior, which is our environment. So we've talked previously about how environment shapes our habits and choices. And you could imagine that if you lived in a very dangerous environment, you would make different choices than if you lived in a very safe environment. And it ties in with the second driver of human behavior, which is genetics. The guppies don't get to choose whether they're brightly colored or dully colored, but whether or not they are is optimized in a different way for the type of environment that they live in. And so in the next lessons, we're going to discuss the type of genetics that we're born with, how that impacts our behavior and the choices that we make, and how to optimize for that so that we can build better habits based on the genetic deck of cards that we have been dealt, rather than trying to force feed habits into a situation that doesn't happen to work well for us or for the environment that we live and operate in. So I'll see you in the next lesson when we talk about behavioral genetics and how it links to the habits that we want to build.